Would it be true to say that you're here because you want to know how to manifest your goals? You have a desire, you have a wish, you want to see it happen, right? But it's just not happening. It's not happening the way you want to. I'm going to give you specific examples in my life how I manifested, in one case, a large sum of money. And the way it happened was, well, it's quite a story, but I'm going to abbreviate it for you. And I'm going to detail it for you. I'm also going to briefly tell you how I manifested my beach life in Playa del Carmen and in Bali and currently in the Philippines, my amazing life. But I'm going to give you specific details of exactly what I did. Let's dive in and we'll see how to do it the Neville Goddard way. Now, many a YouTuber, teacher, coach, or those that teach manifesting might make you wait till the end of the video to find out the good stuff. I'm going to tell you about how I manifested first my large sum of money at the beginning of the video. Here you go. All of us can remember back in 2019 when everything seemed to be going pretty well. The economy was pretty good and most of us probably were pursuing some good careers if we were still working. At that time, I was working for Hilton Hotels. I was a salesperson for vacation packages. One of the most difficult sales that there possibly could be. What I did is I put the law of assumption, to the full test. I imagined very specifically 1 month ahead of the event, the date it would happen, that I would have what is called an elite sale, a sale of over $90,000, yielding a commission of over $20,000. I predetermined a month ahead of time exactly what would happen. I would climb the stairs to the sales floor. I would be introduced to my couple for a 2-hour presentation. They would like me. They would qualify, which means they had to have significant financial means. They had to have the desire to vacation to wonderful places around the world that Hilton offered, in beautiful resorts. So they would have to qualify, they would have to have the desire, and most importantly, they would have to say yes. Remember, most come into those presentations already only for the vacation, the 2 or 3 days that Hilton wines and dines them, and beautiful, beautiful hotel, swimming pools, great vacation. But as far as the sale goes, no way. They already decide ahead of time in most cases that they're going to say no, regardless of what the salesperson says, no matter how persuasive he is. So I had all that against me, but I didn't care. I predicted the day, which would be November 28th of 2018. And I also predicted all the circumstances that would be involved, that 2 specific salespeople on the following morning, when we did our morning meeting, which was regulated, we always did that every morning the following day, that they would actually be there that morning. Now, again, remember, this is 1 month ahead of time. I did all of this process of using my imagination. Now, understand from the get-go, that's nearly would seem absolutely impossible, if not improbable, because I had no idea who I would have that day, and I had no idea out of the 2 or 3 presentations I might do that day, if anybody would even be qualified for a small package, let alone one of our larger packages. What I did was I actually scripted it. I wrote out in detail how it would go, that I would climb the stairs leading up to the sales floor, meet my clients, they would like me immediately, we'd have a great 2-hour presentation, and they would say yes, they would qualify, and they would buy. I also imagined in detail, because I really wanted to put this to the detailed test, I imagined that the following morning, when we had our sales meeting, that out of the normally 55 to 65 salespeople there, two particular salespeople would not only be there, and I had no idea what their days off were, they would actually be there that morning. They would go out of their way. Those two particular individuals, Brian and Richard, would go out of their way to congratulate me. On that morning, the morning after I'd made that amazing sell, Brian was sitting next to me, and when the director announced my sell, at which everybody clapped, he elbowed me and said, "Robert, why didn't you tell me about this? I had no idea. Congratulations." I went up and gave a little spiel basically about how the sales presentation went. I didn't go into how I'd use my imagination for a month. I knew that would be too much for them to believe. Trust me, I was better off keeping it to myself. And when I sat down, I looked across the sales force, and Richard was staring at me from across the room, put his hand up, smiled, and gave me that big congratulations. He was the other individual. He also went out of his way to come up to me after the meeting to make sure he expressed his excitement and happiness for me. Both of those gentlemen are in their late 60s. Actually, Richard in his early 70s. They often take extra days off, which they're allowed to do because they're good salespeople. I had no idea if they would be there. They were there. They went out of their way to congratulate me. Everything went down exactly as I planned. I had written it out. I'd scripted it out in detail. I recorded it. It was about a 4-minute meditation that I brought into my meditation, an imaginal event that I imagined climbing the stairs, meeting my couple, them sitting down with me, liking me, accepting what I said, agreeing to a large package, vacation package, and actually qualifying and buying. And I imagined in detail that I would meet Brian and Richard the following day after my sale was announced and be congratulated by them. This was absolutely impossible to be a simple coincidence. Now, I worked for Hilton in that position from 2015 until I was laid off in 2020 because of COVID. During those 5 years, I had a total, I think, of 16 elite sales. A lot of salespeople can work for years and maybe have one or none. It is absolutely a rare falling star to catch and actually succeed with one of those sales. I had actually predetermined the date, the individuals involved, how it would go down, and that it would be an elite sale. Exactly. There's absolutely no way that I could be convinced otherwise that that was not a specific use of the law of assumption successfully. Now take a look at the screen again. Define your objective. I knew definitely what I wanted. In fact, following step 2, I constructed an event, an act, an imaginal event, which it says you believe you will encounter following the fulfillment of your desire. So I actually included what would follow, which would be Brian and Richard congratulating me on the following day. I imagined it clearly. I scripted it out. I recorded it. I was there. I wasn't watching it. I imagined myself in that scene and thought from it. I thought from the fulfillment of my desire. I did step 3, which is every night I would read the script before sleeping. Then I would immobilize my physical body. Basically, this means lay down to sleep. And I would induce a state of consciousness akin to sleep. That basically means going into the alpha brain meditative state, which I describe in my other videos. See the links. Then mentally fill yourself right into the proposed action, imagining all the while that you are actually performing the action here and now, so that you experience in imagination what you would experience in the flesh were you to realize your goal. And that's exactly what I did. Every night, I imagined myself into that scene as if I was already in it. I already had it. I made that sell. I met the two gentlemen the following day that congratulated me. Everything I had imagined in detail, along with writing it out, I also recorded it. And I would listen to it after my meditation. Then I would listen to that tape. I would listen to that recording from my phone. You can get it on a phone app, recording app. It's very easy. Record your own imaginal event and take it right to bed with you. So I did that night after night after night. Now, every morning, I would go back over my script in the morning. That's also a great time to do it. But I would also do another brief meditation in the morning, imagining myself receiving that cell, the size, the great commission that would come from it, and meeting the two men the following morning, congratulating me. I did that over and over and over and over every night and every morning, and I would think about it also during the day and reread it during the day. Now, before I go into my second example, which is my amazing beach life and how I imagine that, take a look at the screen here. Neville said, and again, this is from Law and the Promise, Chapter 1, one of his amazing books, every image can be embodied, but unless you yourself enter the image and think from it, it is incapable of birth. Therefore, it is the height of folly to expect the wish to be realized by the mere passage of time. We must occupy it in imagination. Neville says, that which requires imaginative occupancy to produce its effect, obviously, cannot be effected without such occupancy. You cannot be in one image and not suffer the consequences of being in another. So you need to occupy it. And remember, I did this day and night. He says that imagination is a spiritual sensation. Enter the image of the wish fulfilled. Don't look at it like on a movie screen. Enter it. Be in it, experiencing it. And give it the sensory vividness and tones of reality by mentally acting as you would act were it a physical fact. Example number 2. Now this was very much tied in to my being laid off. It was March of 2020. COVID had begun. It was in the early stages. They hadn't even really identified it yet. I contracted COVID the first week of April, and around that time is when everything hit the fan, so to speak. A lot of companies were shut down. We were masked up. We were told not even to leave home. It was a complete lockdown, as you remember. It was terrible. I don't know where you were living or what you were experiencing at the time, but go back and imagine that. I had been imagining already for several months. Since November of 2019, I had already begun my imaginal practice of imagining myself living a beach life. Now, unlike many others, I wasn't really prepared financially, but I decided to go ahead and retire when I was laid off by Hilton. I turned 63 in May, and I decided I was going to go ahead and start my beach life regardless of what was going on. And the only place you could move at that time, one of the only places, was Mexico. I had already been to Playa del Carmen a couple of times, and I decided that I was going to move there. So I actually moved to Playa del Carmen, and I got an amazing apartment for $400 a month, close to the beach, a short walk, and I did over 100 scuba dives. I had an amazing experience, and my beach life had begun. Let's go back to the process, because I used the same process for that large cell. I used the same process for manifesting my beach life. So what I did in late 2019, I'd already constructed a scene which implied that I had my desired life. I imagined myself living in the South Pacific, in Southeast Asia. That was my ultimate goal. I had my feet in the sand. The sand was white and warm. The ocean, beautiful ocean, was in front of me. The waves were washing up on my feet. I could smell the salt air. I could feel the light breeze, the warm sun on my shoulders, and behind me, palm trees, coconut trees, beautiful greenery, and a setting of wonderful green mountains. And I had that setting in mind there with my home nearby, living by the beach, enjoying that life. I was there. I was experiencing it. I wrote that out. I recorded it. I imagined it. And I took that into my sleep, into my alpha state, into that immobilized state, that imaginal event. And I would go over it and imagine it again and again as I fell asleep and took that into my subconscious, connected with my God within, where all things are possible, and left that to the power of God within to create the circumstances, the necessary events that would need to take place in order for it to unfold. I simply trusted and imagined already living that life. I was living, as Neville says, I was living in the end. I was living from my result, not imagining it on a movie screen, but I was within it. I was sitting on that warm sand. I had my feet in the sand, the ocean in front of me, the mountains behind me, my home nearby. I took the first step moving to Mexico because it was one of the only places you could go, but that life was beautiful there. After 9 months, I got a special visa that allowed me, still during COVID, right? This was early 2021, that I moved to Bali, Indonesia. Once again, I had a home close to the beach, ideal circumstances. I had wonderful experiences, met wonderful people, and I had a wonderful life there for 2 years. It was fantastic. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus manifestation that was related, but let me explain. I actually designed and imagined meeting the ideal woman on the beach. I would actually meet her on the beach. Now, I actually designed this during 2020, but for the 2 years that I was in Bali, though I met a couple of lovely ladies, had great experiences, they weren't the one. And the reason that they weren't was because I interfered. I didn't stay with the process. I didn't stay with the script and what I had written out specifically that I desired in a woman. So I went back to it. I went back to my notes and I got serious because I really wanted to meet the one. Okay. So I'd gone back and I'd visited my family in America. And after a couple of months of family time, I was off to where I live now in the Philippines. I had written down a couple of years ago 16 qualities, 16 specific qualities that I sought in a partner. And I had imagined meeting her actually on the beach. After my arrival in the Philippines in July, the first week of August, I was on the island of Mindoro, Puerto Galera, where I currently live. And I was on the beach after being there just a few days, walking on the beach. I met a young lady, and guess what? As things turned out, we are now together, and she had all 16 qualities that I wrote out. Now, the 16 qualities are individual. For me, they included personality traits, habits, hobbies, likes and dislikes, food likes and dislikes, romantic qualities, which I won't get into, right? But having that commonality exactly as I had desired, and I had written it out in detail. She qualified on every level, and you can see that on my video on love, and I'll leave that in the link. So although I'm a student, a teacher, and a coach, I too am prone to weakness and failure. So what I've realized over these last 4 or 5 years, particularly, is that this is a way of life that you must be consistent with. It must become a habit. Notice on the screen the thoughts from chapter 1, the law, imagining creates reality, from the law and the promise. Notice the paragraph that I speak about the key. Neville states, but whenever one state, one imagined life, grows so stable as to become your constant mood, your habitual attitude, feeling we could add, then that habitual state defines your character and is a true transformation. How do you do it? Self-abandonment. That's the secret. You must abandon yourself mentally to your wish fulfilled. Notice fulfilled is past tense. It is yours. Imagine it as already yours. In your love for that state, and in doing so, live in the new state and no more in the old state. When you firmly decide what you want in life, imagine it as true and stay faithful to it, because faith is loyalty to the unseen, that it will become seen, and you imagine it true, you too can have success using these methods yourself. Please comment. I'd love to see your observations if you're actually using what I've given you about the imaginal event and these 3 steps. I'll talk to you again soon.